Hello, friends! Thank you for joining me and my good friend Shannon Drye here on Writers Talk Classical Education, Season 1. Shannon Drye is a wife, homeschooling mom, outschool teacher, and wannabe world traveler. Shannon is a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill with a bachelor's degree in elementary education. She has a master's degree in middle grades education from UNC Charlotte. Shannon taught public school for 8 years before deciding to be a stay-at-home mom and homeschool her 3 girls. As a homeschool mom, Shannon tries to follow her girls' passions while ensuring the basics of math and reading are met daily. As an Outschool teacher, she fulfills her love of teaching math through games with her 5th, 6th, and 7th graders. As a wife to Eric, an engineer, she embraces his love of spreadsheets for all things, including groceries. She finds so much joy when traveling to new places with her family. And Shannon and I were just traveling not so long ago. We spent some time a day. We got to see each other in Florida, and her family did some awesome things there, and we got to do some awesome things there. So thanks for being here today, Shannon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Holly. I'm excited.
Well, let's get started on this bonus episode by getting an idea about you and your background. So Shannon, what is your education background? Is it, were you homeschooled, Shannon?
I was not. I grew up in the public school system, and I also went to college at a public university, and then I taught public school for 8 years. So I've been public schooled for my whole life until my own children.
I'm right there with you, Shannon.
Mhm.
So why did you decide to homeschool? Coming from a public school background, um, tell us a little bit about that.
It was kind of a shocker to me too, because I've always been very passionate about teaching and public school in general. But then COVID occurred, and when COVID happened, my mom had cancer, and we really wanted to see her as much as we could. So we decided to homeschool, mostly because of that. Also, my oldest was only in kindergarten and didn't really do well with online learning. So we switched to homeschooling her for first grade. And then in the fall of 2021, she was supposed to go to second grade, and my kindergartner was going to be starting school, and they wanted to try it. And I was like, my heart was telling me, like, no, I want to keep homeschooling. Like, I love homeschooling. This works great for us. But my second grader, she was second grade at the time, she is very like strong-willed and has a very good way of convincing you of what she feels. So she was so gung-ho on trying public school again. So we did it. And I loved their school, but it just something just didn't sit right. No one was really loving the new schedule, the homework. It wasn't the right fit for us anymore. And so then winter break came, and no one wanted to go back to school. And I was just like, oh, okay, back to homeschooling we go. So now we're back at homeschooling, and my oldest is in third grade, and I have a first grader and a pre-K.
You've got all 3 girls, and they're at different stages. I have a quick
Mhm.
question, kind of as an aside. In kindergarten, did they have kindergarten homework? I'm just curious.
They did, yes. As a kindergartner, it was like they would get sent homework home at the beginning of the week, like a Monday, and then you have to turn it in on Friday. And
Okay.
the kindergarten homework wasn't, I mean, my kindergartner at the time, the second time we went back, she loves
Mhm.
work like that. So it was not a big deal for her. But my oldest, because she was in second grade, just a really long day to go from like 8 hours at school. And then in second grade, they had spelling words and math and reading. And it was just a lot where she wanted to be like outside playing. And it caused many battles
Yeah.
that I was not enjoying. So, and neither was she.
I hear you. I was asking that because recently I was speaking with a friend who has a kindergartner, and her son had homework on the weekend as well. And I thought that was a little overkill. So
Yeah.
anyway, I know it works for some kids and some kids just love it, but I understand how with other kids it might be more of a power struggle. So so here you are, you're already teaching. You have the public school teacher experience. You had some homeschooling teacher experience, and you're faced with the decision, okay, do I pull my children out of public school and do homeschool again. And on top of that, you are also an amazing teacher on a platform called Outschool. So, for some of our listeners who don't know, what is Outschool and how has it been a positive thing for you and your family and your students?
Yeah. Yeah. Outschool is an online platform that's for kids ages 3 to 18. And there's all sorts of classes by all sorts of adults on the platform. So some people teach math, some people teach reading, but you also have things like gardening or sewing, that sort of thing. And it's kind of like, I describe it as like an Etsy, but for like education. So I teach math on their fifth, sixth, and seventh graders, and I started it when my children were going back to public school, when I thought, okay, we're doing public school again. I'm going to start trying to get my foot back in the door of teaching because I really had missed that. I really had missed teaching. I thought, well, if I'm not homeschooling and they're back at school, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I started I started it. And then once we jumped back into homeschool, I kind of just lessened my Outschool teaching load, but it's really balanced out nicely to be able to do both homeschool and Outschool. And I really like it.
Yes, and for those of you who don't know Shannon, she is a go-getter. And she is also somebody who loves math. And I think it's just one of these things that like math is your love language. It is not my love language. So anybody who would like maybe somebody to come alongside them and help them teach their students math, Shannon is a great resource. In fact, my son is probably in a couple years going to be about the age of your Outschool students. So we will chat.
Okay, that'll be fun.
So I don't think anybody would know this, but I did try teaching Outschool for a short stint, and it just wasn't for me. But I did Spanish classes, and it was actually a lot of fun. It was a little challenging adjusting to the online format, but I'm sure you get used to it over time, and so many people are doing that now. What is one challenge that you had to face, or in general, like what's a challenge when it comes to teaching online, and if you have any challenges, and have you found any ways to overcome this challenge?
Yeah, I think for a lot of kids, age is a factor. I noticed like when I teach fourth and fifth graders, their attention span online is a lot smaller. And so I try to use like multiple games. So like a quick little mini lesson and then a game, quick little mini lesson and then a game. My seventh graders can go longer. Like they could do a 40-minute class and they're okay. But I really try to do games a lot and then just connecting with the students and making sure that like I know about them, I know what they're doing on the weekend. I can ask how their birthday party was, or how their dog's doing, that sort of thing. So my classes are pretty small too. I cap them at 7 kids
Hmm.
for each class. So that way I really can get to know them.
Yeah.
It would be, I know some teachers do a great job getting to know bigger classes, but for me, that's kind of like my comfort level to make sure everyone is engaged and learning.
Ah, that's a great tip. Like smaller groups are probably ideal in many cases, not just online setting, but I could see how keeping the engagement up through games and getting to know their interests and speaking to their interests so you can maybe craft games that are to their interests. That might be something that you enjoy doing with your younger kids and probably the older kids too like it. I don't know.
Mhm.
Or are they
They
kind
do,
of too
yeah.
cool for that?
Especially, no, they like the games too, especially like shout out to a couple online games. There's it's called gimkit.com. It was created by someone as like their college project, but it's really kind of taken off and their game modes kind of model other video games that I personally don't know, but my students will be like, oh, this is like, and then they name a game that it's kind of similar to. But in order to play the game, you have to like answer a math question to get the energy to move. So the older kids like those kind of games too.
That's awesome. Keeping them engaged. And so that kind of segs into our question. You've already answered it more or less, but like some strategies you've discovered other than games to keep your kids engaged in the online math classes. Have we covered them all?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I also like send my slides. I think it helps for some students who like to take notes. Not all my kids take notes. It kind of depends on what they would like because it also gives them a recording of the class so they could go back and look at it.
Oh, yeah.
But I think for some students, having the actual paper to write on as we go is helpful. And then also they have a homework assignment each um, after each class because I can't see them writing, like I can't see their actual math. So the assignment, they send me a picture of it so I can actually see their math thinking on paper and can send feedback and help kind of fix any corrections right then before we move on. So I think that helps too.
That's awesome. Is that something you came up with yourself?
Yeah, I think some other teachers give homework, but not many. A lot of people just give the homework and then also give the answer key.
Okay.
And a lot of parents that
Hmm.
are they're outsourcing math because they want other people to teach the math. They really appreciate me. Like once they send me the homework, I screenshot it on my phone and I actually write, like I circle where they went wrong and write a little note and then they get to send it back to me for a correction.
Hmm.
And it is time, it takes more time on my part and theirs, but it ensures that they're learning and that they're fixing any misconceptions they had, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, that would be. I would have really, as a parent, I would really appreciate that. So that's going like above and beyond. So props to you. I think that's great. I bet that's like a best practice. And so you're doing a best practice. So keeping them engaged, keeping them accountable, and then communicating with the parents, like you were saying. So awesome, awesome stuff. How is homeschooling? Okay, switching gears a little bit, switching it up. How is homeschooling different from teaching online? I know that's kind of like, duh, obvious. You're with your children in the
Yeah,
house, at least I would think.
yeah.
Um, but other than that, the obvious, what has it been like for you, adjusting or having that difference in um, modality of how you're teaching?
Yeah, I find myself having to like remind myself to give my best effort to my children also. Because I feel like when I taught public school, and I only had one daughter at the time when I taught public school, and I would find like the best part of myself being giving to my students in my job and not my daughter at home. And that was one reason why then I shifted game plans for life. And so I find here I have to like make sure like, okay, I've like given my all to my Outschool students. I need to do the same for my own children. So just reminding myself of that because sometimes when I'm during homeschool at the same time, it's like, oh, well, dishes need to be emptied and the dog needs to be walked and the oil needs to be changed. Like
Hmm.
I can find myself doing all of these other things instead of really focusing in on my children and what they want to learn and need to learn.
Hmm.
So I feel like I have to like make a time frame each day where like these hours are reserved for homeschool. And I have to, people like if they invite us for play dates during that time, unless it's something extra special that I like field day or something, then I try to say, oh, we're homeschooling then. Can you do it at this time? So I feel like I have to like be really purposeful in using my time and our kids' time for school. And that might not be just doing math, like in our workbooks, but also like whatever they're wanting to learn about in science or history, just like making the time for it and making sure I put my all into that too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think for all of us, it's like you don't even have to have like a job, uh, um, but all these, like, some of our listeners probably do have jobs like you where they're teaching other students, or maybe they have like a blogging job or something on the side that they do in addition to teaching their homeschoolers at home, their kids. So I think it's a good reminder for all of us. But even without those other jobs, we have the things of the home, like you just mentioned, like making sure the car is maintained and the engine isn't dead, and
Mhm.
all these things. Just Shannon unfortunately had a mishap over their trip back from Florida. Their engine died. That's why I said that. But all these other things, like, keeping the laundry going, which I mean, it's just always going to be there. You're always going to have to do it. And these like things you have to build into your day, obviously, in addition to the academics. And so it's so cool how I heard you say you want to make sure that your kids are getting the things they need to learn in the things they want to learn. And I absolutely love that about you because you are good at honing in on their interests. So this may tie into that because homeschooling comes with a lot of challenges, but it also comes with joys. So can you think of maybe a joy and maybe a challenge that you've experienced when you've homeschooled your own daughters?
Yeah. So I feel like I it's really a joy for me when I see them like creating. They love to like build a fort where they're all playing together, or they built a few weeks ago, they were determined to create a zip line in our backyard. And they were all three working together, and it was like a 3 day long process because at first they tried it. They had a rope and they had a rope they were holding on to, and they noticed friction was causing the rope to break. So then they had to come up with a new plan. So they got like the handlebar that's made of metal from like the swing set, the bar with the
Yes.
rings, and they put that. And eventually, after several days of like trial and error, sure enough, they had a zip line going in the backyard. Now it only went like this far. I mean, not this far, but it was
Yeah.
small. But for them, it was perfect. And they were so proud. So I feel like when they're creating something together, and they use a lot of trial and error, that makes me like, oh, like learning science in action, which I really like. And then the struggle for me, I think, is like my public school teacher mentality, where I feel like, okay, we are only at this spot in our math curriculum and we're already in April. And I feel kind of trying to just let make sure we are meeting our goals, but also try not to compare my kids to what I want them to be. Does that make sense? That's kind of a
Completely.
struggle for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That I think especially almost even more so for people who have taught in the past with a like scope and sequence standard course of study. It's very tempting to look back and just kind of compare your own kids to the where were my third graders when I taught back in 2011, like kind of compare. But yeah, I think that the beauty of it is we get to meet them where they are and challenge them where they need to be challenged and then help them, slow down a little bit and remediate where we see them. And they have that one-on-one. I mean, you're going to catch it. You're going to be catching it like so quickly. And they benefit,
Mhm.
I think, a lot from that. And so, yeah, I think your girl's a great example of like just what it looks like to, you know, work hard during the time that we have allotted to school time. And then in the afternoons, I assume that's when a lot of you pursue the interests um, that your kids have told you they really enjoy. So I'm going to skip ahead really quickly because this ties into what your daughter is doing right now. Can you tell us a little bit about her new gymnastics club? Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, she started it. It's been around almost 2 months now. She really wanted to be on a traveling gymnastics team. And she does take a once a week gymnastics class. And where she does that, they have a traveling team. She really wanted to be on it, but it just was, my husband and I decided it just wasn't going to work for our family time wise and financially. So we broke the news to her like, this isn't going to be the year that we can do that, Madeline. And so she went into brainstorming action after she was sad for a little while. She brainstormed and she was like, I'm going to start my own team. So
She was
she
determined.
Yes, she is. And so she asked several girls in the neighborhood, and I think they're up to eight or nine people that come, and we do it outside because we don't have space inside for all of the stuff and all the people. But she has a clipboard. She wants a whistle, but I have not gotten her whistle. But she has a clipboard where they sign in and they do stretches, and she sets up stations for them to do, and she's just really determined about it. So it's neat to see her leadership skills grow, and also some like challenges she's had along the way where she'll be like, they're not listening to me. Like they just want to jump on the trampoline. They don't want to do this. So it's been kind of fun for us to talk through like some what strategies, some things we could try or change. She wants to have a showcase and matching shirts. So she has big dreams for this gymnastics team.
I love it. I think that, a lot of us moms and dads have probably heard a child say, "Oh, I would love to do this," or have, these lofty plans. I would love to get the neighborhood kids together and start I don't know, jump rope club or, gymnastics club or a clubhouse where we meet every week and have secret meetings or whatever. And some of us have listened to that and thought, how serious do I take them, or how far do I take this idea? What advice would you give to other parents whose kids have started pursuing interests and have talked to you maybe, or have wanted to take it a step further? What would you say to those parents?
I'd say if it's reasonable, give it a shot. I mean, my oldest definitely has a lot of dreams that sometimes I don't think I can make happen. Like she wanted to create before the gymnastics team, she wanted to create a horse. She wanted to build like a robot horse that would actually go that she could ride on. And she started gathering materials because we have a whole bunch of stuff in the shed, like scrap wood and stuff. And she's drafting up an idea and so I was just like, I don't know if we can get this to actually move. Like we could build a horse for you to sit on, but the movement part's going to be tough. So some of those kinds of dreams I try to like reasonably talk through with her. But if it's something I think she can do, then I try to support her. It does take quite a bit of our time because she was determined we needed to practice 2 times a week. So Monday and Thursday afternoons for an hour, there's practice, and it's been going for about 6 weeks, and she is determined to do it twice a week, every week. So it I guess just carving out the time has been a little bit hard because I'm usually on those afternoons before gymnastics team, that's when I would be doing laundry or making dinner, that sort of thing. But I try my best to be out there. A couple other moms come over too, and then that way I can make sure I listen in and support. Some of them need help doing the bars where they flip over and that sort of thing. So I say go for it.
Yeah, what a neat thing. I mean, that's just an example of how you can guide your kids to do something that they're interested in, but you give them some parameters. You make it reasonable, like you approach it in a reasonable way, and you might like brainstorm. And I think that that's a great way to not just do something that's fun, have them pursue something that's fun, but pursue something that will help them grow as individuals. And it sounds like she really has grown in leadership and in gymnastics, of course. And then it's a good way, I guess, for us to kind of connect with other moms too, other parents who might come into that space, into that meeting time. So, oh, wow, props to you. I think that's awesome. And I think also another thing I wanted to mention, I think a few years ago, you had Madeline, um, she was asking you about a party she wanted to plan. Is that right? And you guys got together, you went to the drawing board. You're like, okay, these are the parameters. What ideas do you have? Let's brainstorm and let's see what we can do reasonably. And she did it, right? Didn't she plan a
Mhm.
party?
Yeah, she loves to plan parties. I believe that first one was a Halloween party you might be thinking of, but yes, she loves to party plan, except for birthday parties. She doesn't like a big birthday party, but she loves to be the person planning the party and planning the snacks. Um, yes, she is a planner, and I just try to support. They did a just this morning, last night, her cousin spent the night and she wanted to do a dance show in the cul-de-sac. They put flyers in people's mailboxes, and we had a dance show this morning. So we have really great neighbors who just like are so supportive also and come out at 9:30 on a Sunday to watch a dance performance. So but yes, she has lots of goals and I just try to support as I can, like you said, guide and parameters when
Yeah,
needed.
I like it. And when you are talking about homeschooling, you also utilize her interests and your other daughter's interests. How does that kind of inform you when you're planning for homeschool for the academic part, I guess?
Yeah. I think for reading, I try to use their interests as much as I can to choose books for them. They've even started to notice like, because sometimes when you take them to the library, my daughters will pick the books with like the cute kittens or a unicorn. And my two oldest who can read have started to notice that like sometimes the cutesy front isn't what interests them as much. And so they've started to kind of ask me a little bit more to guide them, especially my oldest, in picking out chapter books. So that's one way I think that we've used their interest. And then the same with science. Science and history, I feel like with reading and math, I tend to follow the like Common Core standards by year. But with science and social studies, I give a little more freedom with what we are learning about. And I can use their interest to kind of choose. Like last summer, they were all into like Antarctica. So we studied a whole bunch about like the animals that are there and what the terrain is like. And I hope to do that again this summer. I find in the summers, I'm like, let's go, guys. What do we want to learn about? Try to pep us up.
And field trips too.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's true. Oh, I love history field trips. We did US history this year through Beautiful Feet, I think it was called. But it's so much stuff is near North Carolina or in North Carolina even that goes along with US history that field trips were a blast this year and we all learned a lot, including me. It was fun.
Awesome. Well, one more quick question going along with that. Speaking of books, you said Beautiful Feet books, and I know from what I'm familiar with, what I've seen in their catalogs, they recommend a lot of different books that are like living picture books, maybe some chapter books thrown in there. Can you describe the Beautiful Feet books just to give people an idea of what that's like? And also, if there has been a book that you all have read together, you and your kids, what would you say has been an impactful book for you guys this
Yeah.
past year or just in homeschooling in general?
Yeah, I love the Beautiful Feet study. We did the US History Primary Pack, which is labeled like K3, I think. But I have some friends who did it. They have kids ages like kindergarten through middle school, and they all loved it. It's all like you said, yeah, well, most of them are beautiful picture books, living books. There are a few chapter books, but I would usually read them as we're having breakfast and they just draw everybody in with the story, but at the same time they're learning about a person who was important in history or a time that was important in history. And I really also appreciated Beautiful Feet in the teacher's guide. They make sure to point out like in this book there might be some topics on this that you want to make sure you're prepared to talk about with your children. Things like maybe racism or like sensitive topics on how a book that maybe was written in 1920 might portray something different than what most people think now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember, I feel like it was in a book about Columbus. It had talked about the world being flat, but when Columbus was alive, they already knew the world wasn't flat. And the teacher guide made sure to like point out that so we could talk about it as we were reading. So I loved it. And a book that's impactful. This was not in The Beautiful Feet, but we just finished it a little bit ago. It was called Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. I wrote it down to make sure I remember. Um,
What
and
was the author's name? I'm sorry.
Grace Lynn,
Grace Lang. Got
Lynn, Lin.
it. Ling.
Yeah,
Got it. Sorry.
it's okay, Lin. So the book is just like a beautiful story. It's like a Chinese, I think it would be folk tale or folklore, but it's a chapter book, but it's beautifully written and has really beautiful illustrations also, which helps my youngest if I choose a chapter book that has a few illustrations per chapter. But kind of the main theme is gratitude. And because it starts where like the little girl and her family, they are very poor and recognize that they're poor. And then there's this whole journey the girl goes through and the mom and dad. I don't know. It was a great story. And my kids keep saying like, is there another one? I want to read it again, which I always know it's like an impactful story when we want to read it more than once. So
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you say all three of your kids have enjoyed that one, and I will have to link that one in the show notes. So thanks for that title. Awesome. And then I was going to ask you, oh, yes, off the cuff. when and where is your next field trip? Do you have one planned?
That's a good question. I don't think I have one planned right now because we wrapped up our US history unit and now we are jumping into they also have a geography unit that I was
Oh,
going to do this summer. And
cool.
so we're starting in China. So I don't know. That's why I was bummed about US history ending because I've got to get much more creative with how to do our field trips. I might have to use a little more YouTube or Google, or is it Planet Earth? Which one can you zoom in and see like the Great Wall of China?
I think it might be Google Earth, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, so we might have to utilize more of the technology tools, I think. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I need to research some good field trip ideas.
Yes. Well, I know you'll come up with some good ones. And I love how you tie in, geography and history. You know that it's cool how you can integrate literature, geography, and history. And that's a great thing you do with all three. It's not like you have to come up with separate geography lessons for each child or any of that stuff. That's enough to make us go crazy, right? But those subjects can be integrated and we can do them together. And I'm glad you guys have been able to enjoy that with your homeschooling. So, look, we only have a few more minutes, but I'm going to ask you a little bit more about Outschool since we know you're an Outschool teacher now. What are the classes that you're currently teaching or that you're planning to teach soon? And if you offer one-on-one math tutoring, what ages or topics do you normally tutor, and how can we connect with you? I know that's a lot, so just break it down. So,
Yeah,
what Outschool classes first?
yeah. I'm finishing up my full curriculum classes now. Those will finish in May, but I do have a few summer classes starting up in June. That are they mostly start with jumping into fifth grade math or jumping into sixth grade math. They're just kind of a little preview. We meet twice a week. The first meeting is mini lessons, and then the second meeting is games. So it's just a fun way to kind of get a quick preview of what you'll learn the next year. And for example, like fractions are really big in sixth grade, multiplying and dividing fractions. So we kind of do a little bit of that in the summer and make sure we remember how to simplify fractions and make fractions proper to be ready for the school year. So you can find it if you Google Shannon Drye Outschool, my profile will pop up and you can see all my classes there.
All right, I can link that also so people can find you quickly. And um, as far as that goes, I know you've really enjoyed teaching math. And like I said, it's your love language. Shannon, I love how you tie in, though, all these different subjects. And you've actually probably found a love for so many different things that you never knew that you loved before. Homeschooling, I would imagine.
Yes, I think I love teaching history the most and my kids like it the most also. And it's all because we're using read alouds and you give me lots of great tips for read alouds and living books also. I've learned so much about living books from you.
Oh.
So we really have enjoyed that a lot. And I think it just makes it enjoyable for everybody.
Well, thank you. I love learning from other teachers, homeschool moms, homeschool parents. It's awesome. So thank you. I wish we could discuss more, Shannon, but I believe this is all the time we have now. But thank you so much for talking with me and with our listeners. It's always a joy to talk to you.
Yes. Thank you, Holly. This was so much fun. And I hope to see you again.